My dear children, today in this module we are going to learn the term banking and different types of banks. Have you heard the term bank or banking? Yes. According to Banking Regulations Act of India 1949 defines banking as accepting for the purpose of lending or of investment of deposits of money from the public, repayable on demand and otherwise, or withdrawable by check, draft, order, or otherwise. The Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 and the Banking Regulations Act 1949 govern the banking operations in India. The important types of banks are commercial bank, specialized banks, cooperative banks, and central bank. These are the different types of bank. The first type of bank is commercial bank. Commercial banks are the institutions dealing in money. These are governed by Indian Banking Regulations Act 1949 and according to it, banking means accepting deposits of money from the public for the purpose of lending or investment. There are two types of commercial banks. They are public sector banks and private sector banks. Public sector banks are those in which the government has a major stake and they usually need to emphasize on social objectives than on profitability. Private sector banks are owned, managed, and controlled by private promoters, and their aim is to make profit. Second type of bank is cooperative banks. Cooperative banking is a small scale banking carried on a non-profit or non-loss basis for mutual cooperation and help. These banks are engaged in financing rural and agricultural development. They are established under the Cooperative Credit Societies Act 1904. Cooperative banks are governed by the provisions of State Cooperative Societies Act and meant essentially for providing cheap credit to their members. It is an important source of rural credit, that is, agricultural financing in India. In cooperative banks, they function on no profit, no loss basis. They perform limited banking functions. Some of these are scheduled banks, but most are non-scheduled banks. Another type of bank is specialized banks. These are some banks which cater to the requirement and provide overall support for setting up business in specific areas of activity. Exim Bank, SIDBI, and NABARD are the examples of such banks. They engage themselves in some specific areas or activity and thus are called specialized banks. Specialized banks are foreign exchange banks, industrial banks, development banks, export-import banks catering to specific needs of these unique activities. These banks provide financial aid to the industries, heavy projects and foreign trade. The last type of bank is central bank. The central bank of any country supervises, controls and regulates the activities of all the commercial banks of that country. It also acts as a government banker. It controls and coordinates currency and credit policies of any country. The Reserve Bank of India is the central bank of our country. The important functions of central bank are: the primary function of a central bank is to manage the nation's money supply acting as a lender of last resort to the banking sector during of the bank insolvency or financial crisis. Then second function is to promote and maintain monetary stability and credit and the balance of payments. Then next function is to promote and maintain an adequate banking system. The other functions of central bank are the central bank maintains a cash reserve ratio of the commercial banks. Every commercial bank has to keep a certain percentage of its cash balances as deposits with the central bank. These cash reserves can be utilized by the commercial bank in times of emergency. Central banks in most developed nations are institutionally designed to be independent from political interference. These are the important functions of central bank.